Hi, I'm going to be talking about my capstone project. I worked for the Berks History Center in Reading, Pennsylvania, at their research library, the Henry Johnson Research Library. And there I was an intern working on cataloging archival collections. So I started this back in January, and I've done this over the course of 2 terms. So it's been 20 weeks. And my job was to go in on Saturdays and take collections that had been accessioned but not yet processed and process them accordingly. The collections consisted of photographs, manuscripts, oversized items, books, diaries, you name it, all kinds of different archival material, most of it being local history. The main thing that the Berks History Center works on, the archival side of things anyway, is genealogical material. So most of what they do is help people in the area, figure out more about their history, their ancestry. So a lot of the material I was working with were like photographs of people from 150 years ago that my job was to try and identify them and add those materials to the database and make them searchable so that the public can find this information about the people who lived here 150 years ago or whatever it may be. The work was really, really rewarding because it is my hometown, and I actually learned a lot about my own family and ancestry through the work, which was really cool. And the people there were amazing. I learned so much from them. My supervisor, he was newer to the institution when I started, so he was hired in October of last year. And prior to that, there was an entire year period where there was no archivist. So from October 2020 to October 2021, there was no head archivist in place. So all of the items that were accessioned at that time were done by the head curator at the museum that is linked to the research library. They're two parts of the history center. So she did a lot of the accessioning during that time period, which meant there was a backlog of about a year's worth of material that hadn't been processed at all. So my job was to take that material, look through it, identify what needed to be done with it, where it needed to be housed, how it needed to be housed. I needed to take all the information I could from it and add it to the database to make it publicly available. And then a lot of the times I had to digitize things, figure out the best way to store them appropriately. So there were some funky things with like really oversized objects, or things that we decided maybe should have been given to the museum and not the archive. So we had to go through processes there in transferring that material. So at the beginning of the project, I had set out to do all of the accessions that were brought in during that year-long period. But after looking at it all with my supervisor, we decided that that was not realistic at all. And so we scaled that back to say, let's try and do half of them all. And that was sort of our main objective. We also set out objectives like learn and understand the steps involved in the processing of archival material, which definitely hit that objective. We had one apply archival concepts like provenance, unbroken custody, sanctity of original order, and item level versus series level cataloging to the processing of each collection. And we definitely hit that objective. We did a lot of work with item level versus series level cataloging, which was really interesting to learn about, because traditionally the History Center had always been doing item level cataloging for every single item. And with this new head archivist coming in, he had a background in which he did a lot of series level cataloging. So we did a lot of discussion about what would be the best practice. Is it better to stick with what's been done for continuity's sake? Or should we be looking at maybe incorporating series level cataloging to make the work easier on us? Because especially with the pandemic, they didn't have as large of a workforce. A lot of the volunteers were no longer able to help out. So the backlog needed to be taken care of. So, it was finding that balance between working efficiently or doing the best, most detailed work. So that was really interesting to learn about. And we did a lot of discussion about all kinds of different best archival practices, which was really great to learn from people in the field, especially from two very diverse perspectives, and one person who was an outsider who was more recently educated, and one person who had been with the institution for decades and knew the patron base very well and knew what their needs were. So that was cool to witness and be a part of. And then the last objective we set was to learn how to use their archival database, which was Past Perfect, and it was an older version of Past Perfect. So that was a little bit of an adjustment for me to be working with an older software, but I picked it up pretty quickly, I feel. So we hit all of the objectives that we set out after the revision of saying, let's try to go for half of them instead of all of them. So that was really good and really rewarding to complete that objective. We had just a couple of little hiccup setbacks. My supervisor got COVID at one point, and so there was a week when I couldn't come in because of that. The whole library was closed. In the first half of the project especially, there were some weather issues. Snowstorms made it so that I couldn't come in. And unfortunately, I work full-time, and so the only time I could go to the History Center to work when they were open was on Saturdays. So if I missed a Saturday, I wasn't able to really make that time up. So we compensated for it by working a little bit during the break between the two terms. And I worked a little bit longer than I originally had set out to do so that we could get the full 20-week experience and I could help them out as much as possible. But yeah, I feel like I accomplished everything I set out to do, and I loved working with them. I think it was a really great experience, and I have every intention to keep working with them. I plan on volunteering for them after graduation because I'm going to have a lot more free time soon, and I really loved the work and they need the help. So I plan on continuing that relationship professionally, and yeah, I think this is going to be super helpful for my future. It kind of opened up the door for me for archiving, and I think it's a great little pair to the library cataloging work that I already do. So yeah, it was a great experience overall, and I'm excited to see what it brings for the future.